Hello there, my name is Alex, I am the Silvermont, and this is a video about Dark Souls, and Demon Souls, and Bloodborne. In the past, I've made videos discussing the most powerful kingdoms of the series, the strongest knights and the most terrible beasts. But there's another aspect of the Souls games, those non-combatants who support us in our journeys. Even if they don't raise swords or weave spells, they are no less crucial. You might argue they're some of the most important of all. Whether you call them maidens, level up ladies, or anything else, there's no denying they are a popular subject. And just to clarify, this won't be talking about all of the female characters in the Souls series, but rather only those specific few who act as our direct support. The Maiden in Black, the Emerald Herald, the Firekeeper, and the Doll. We'll look at female and male combatants in a future video, and seeing as there is no direct supporting character for the first Dark Souls, we will instead include Dusk of Oolacile. But who is the best level up lady? Who is the strongest? Who supports their champion the best? Who is your personal favourite? Let me know down in the comments as we look through them one by one, starting in chronological order with Demons Souls.
Soul of the mind, key to life's ether, soul of the lost withdrawn from its vessel, let strength be granted so the world might be mended, so the world might be mended.
The first character we'll be discussing here is also quite possibly the strongest of them. Should you acquire her soul, it can give some insight into the mysterious girl, the Maiden in Black who aids the demon slayers with her command of soul power, was once one of the oldest, most dangerous demons herself. Her soul can be crafted into a spell that allows the slayer of demons to suck the soul out of whatever it touches, or whomever it touches, instantly destroying everything that doesn't possess a demon's soul of its own. And when used on other players, it will reduce their maximum level by 1. The fact that she is able to command souls is, by itself, fascinating, and while she never elucidates on her past, you can make assumptions. False King Allant uses a similar form of soul suck on the Slayer of Demons, so perhaps that is the power of the Old One's right-hand demon. It appears the Maiden in Black has had a change of heart at some point, however, and now wishes to lull the Old One back to sleep. Was she defeated by a monumental or past Slayer of Demon and forced to redeem herself in this way? Why, if it was the former, that would almost make our Maiden in Black akin to Sparda from Devil May Cry, a general of the Demon Mundus who eventually turned on him and sided with humans. The Maiden is enigmatic and speaks rarely of what she might desire. Instead, she suggests the Slayer of Demon aid her in sending the Old One to rest. Upon reaching the end of the game, she remarks that this is the way it must be, and at last my duty is fulfilled. But her personal motivations are never revealed. I believe this is intentional, allowing you, as the player, to fill in the blanks for yourself. Was she touched by some act of humanity? Imprisoned in the Nexus by a past champion? She tells us with an earnest tone that she serves the brave demon slayers, and that she is only here to tend the flames. Despite her status of being a demon, she is regarded favourably by some inhabitants of the Nexus. Whilst the endings are never strictly labelled good or bad, it does seem to consider the act of murdering her an ill one. Stockpile Thomas looks kindly on her, perhaps seeing her as a surrogate for his own lost daughter, but it's doubtful that he knows that much about her true being. Sage Frake, on the other hand, urges the Slayer of Demons to kill her, but not out of malice, indeed adds that she has been tainted by demons and would thank you for relieving her agony. Saint Urbane doesn't seem overly fond of her either, wishing for the soul arts to be purged from Boletaria, perhaps not realising the irony in his words. Still, the Maiden in Black was our first soft-spoken Firekeeper.
For a very long time, I was trapped within the crystal golem. From my home I was taken and banished to a plane of distortion. It was there that thou came to my rescue, long after I had relinquished all hope. So gleeful was I My faith reneweth.
I know it's an odd choice, but as you're no doubt aware, Dark Souls does rather stand out in the series of Demon Souls, Dark Souls and Bloodborne in that we do not have a singular NPC, that is to say non-player character, who doles out our levels and handles our souls or blood echoes, but rather the chosen undead has the ability to manipulate these souls using the bonfires, any of them, as a catalyst, or a forge. Still, it doesn't seem fair not to include the first Dark Souls. Perhaps Anastasia Revastora would be a more fitting role as the Firelink Shrine Firekeeper, but she plays such a small role in the game, and I personally believe Dusk of Oolacile is better suited for this. Had things turned out differently, perhaps we'd be talking about Priscilla, who was rumoured to have once played the role of Level Up Lady in a prototype version of Dark Souls. Dusk, however, plays an important role during the overall game. Prior to the release of the Artorias of the Abyss content, she was found trapped in a crystal golem, and when rescued would repay the chosen undead by teaching them her unique golden sorceries of ancient Oolacile. The expansion, however, gave her a larger role to play. Many centuries ago, the primeval human Manus absconded with the Princess of Oolacile into the Abyss. Knight Artorias set out to save her, but we all know how that turned out. Instead, the task fell to the chosen undead. When returned to the present, she would remark on how similar our countenance is to the legendary Abyss Walker. For whilst she is not in a sound mind during the whole encounter, fragments of the battle remain to her, so perhaps some small part of her knew. As for being trapped in the crystal golem, there is a good chance we can blame Seath, the Scaleless, for that. Why, he seemed rather fond of capturing young maidens, for reasons oft discussed in many other videos. Gentle Dusk has the unique access to golden sorceries, many of which later seem to have been the subject of the Xanthos scholars and their studies. Unlike the soul sorceries of Vinheim, hers are subtle magics, glamours most befitting her nature. Finally, it might bear noting that after his defeat, the essence of Manus, the Father of the Abyss, fragmented into various pieces, the smallest and weakest of which, Nishandra, who represented the wants, the desires of Manus, bore rather a startling resemblance to Dusk, the princess he kidnapped and seemingly tried to consume.
My name is Shanalot. The dragon gave me this name, for I was born with none. I was born of dragons, contrived by men.
Born of dragons, contrived by men, the Emerald Herald has a tragic lot in life. As with most others in this video, and indeed most everyone in the Souls and Bloodborne stories, Shanalot appears to be a creation of men, most likely Aldia and Vendrick, one of their attempts to overcome the undead curse. While she largely resembles a human, she does possess one unusual eye and a heavily bandaged arm. Just what her exact nature is we do not know, but for a time, much of Aldia's research seemed to revolve around the dragons. Perhaps he thought them the key to overcoming the curse. It was the ancient dragon that gave Shanalot her name, but exact specifics are, as is sadly so often the case with Dark Souls 2, hard to figure out. When it comes to abilities, however, Shanalots are focused in two ways. First up, she is able to manipulate ownerless souls to strengthen the bearer of the curse, and to graft Estus shards into the bearer's own flask to strengthen it. Navlan, however, does not believe her to be a true Firekeeper. She also appears to have the ability to manifest herself in physical locations. Whether these are illusions or not is very hard to say. Unlike most of the others here, however, Shanalot has but one life and will remain dead when killed. There are many rumours and tales surrounding her, but one of the most interesting I've heard goes something like this. During a prototype version of Dark Souls 2, the player would rescue Shanalot during the opening segment, wherein she would be a child, and at this point she would obtain the feather that she wields throughout the game. Possibly the child was in search of this feather and encountered some beast, perhaps a dragon, which we do know was initially at the end of the tutorial. only to be saved by the bearer of the curse, and then throughout the game, the adult Shanalot would be our guide as usual. And then near the end, at the Dragon Eyrie, she would return the feather to us, completing the circle and revealing that she was the child from the introduction. How true this is, I have no idea, but there are hints to it here and there. The initial reveal trailer for Dark Souls 2 placed quite an emphasis on her return of the feather, and the introduction cinematic features the bearer of the curse falling through a strange portal, perhaps leading to the inconsistencies and difference in time. It's as interesting to think about as Priscilla's initial role. And when it comes to these level up ladies, Shanalot is certainly my favourite. What can I say? I like brunettes.
The first flame quickly fades. Darkness will shortly settle. But one day, tiny flames will dance across the darkness, like embers linked by lords past.
Perchance, I am biased here, but I would consider the Firekeeper rather uninspired, the most so out of these characters we're talking about today. Whilst her design is graceful and elegant, too much of it is, in my opinion, harkens back to the Maiden in Black. Not only does she share some lines with the Maiden, but even has the potential for a similar ending. Unlike the Maiden, however, it is doubtful that the Firekeeper has any sort of terrifying ancient power resting within her. In fact, in terms of any realistic combat ability, the Firekeeper would probably be the weakest of the bunch. So far as we know, she is simply a maiden, perhaps from Kareem for example, who fulfilled the necessary requirements to take up the mantle of Firekeeper. If you wish for more information about her, well, I have an entire video about her linked in the description. Curiously though, although she exists to serve the Ash, it appears that she, by and large, only assists our player character. You might say she blindly follows our wishes, and that would indeed be a pun, for she has no eyes, or at least no eyesight. If you peek under her curious mask, you'll notice that her eyes match the dull gold of her hair. Irina of Kareem and Anastasia of Astora too were ashen blondes. For all her blind servitude, the Firekeeper isn't without some will of her own, and appears bolder than Irina. Just what she desires, however, is a mystery. Rather like Shanalot, her hands and arms are bandaged, suggesting perhaps some injuries or burns taken from tending the flame. And whilst sight can be restored to her, she doesn't seem too fond of the notion. She will, of course, respond to the gestures made by the Ashen One. Relevant? Not really. Entertaining? Endearing? Definitely. At the end of the day, she exists solely to serve the Ashen One. Isn't that rather sad?
Hello, good hunter. I am a doll, here in this dream to look after you.
The Maiden in Black had more than one spiritual successor. Whilst the Firekeeper inherited some of the Maiden in Black's traits, the doll inherited her voice, that is to say, the same voice actor. What in the real world is nothing more than a plain doll becomes something else entirely when the hunter is possessed of sufficient insight. The doll is a curious one. Whilst not a human or even a living creature, she possesses some of the most stereotypically human and feminine qualities of these featured characters. She nurtures the hunter like a mother, caring for this gore-soaked, blood-cut warrior. She is considerably taller than the hunter, which surely plays into this motherly role. One of the game's endings features her cradling the hunter like a babe. Another shows her standing by the hunter as they are seated in a wheelchair. You can even give her gifts to touch her emotions. These traits are so exaggerated as to seem a tad unnerving, unnatural, as they should be. She is, after all, a mannequin. A doll is nothing more than an imitation of humanity, a convenience for, say, an eldritch horror from the moon that you could well be feeding blood echoes to throughout the story. An imitation of humanity, certainly, but who is the doll an imitation of specifically? Thanks to the old Hunters expansion, we know that the doll was most likely created by the first hunter, Gehrman, or for Gehrman, and based on one of his hunters, one of his proteges, Lady Maria, a noblewoman turned hunter, one of the most powerful hunters, along with Ludwig, standing just below Gehrman himself in glory. Whilst we do not know how powerful or not the doll is, her only abilities appear to be those to manipulate blood echoes. She respawns in the sense that she forever exists inside the hunter's nightmare, even after the moon presence and Gehrman are slain. If Gehrman is the one who wished her personality, it could be that was his wish for Maria, to live in a world where she would have no need for her prodigious skill to be soaked in blood. Whilst Maria herself is one of the most skilled opponents in Bloodborne or Dark Souls, the doll is just a plain doll. Well, what is there to draw a verdict upon, really? I can't tell you your favourite, obviously. How about the most useful, the most powerful? Well, in terms of power, I think it would have to be ranked thusly. The Maiden in Black, Dusk, Shanalot the doll, the Firekeeper, but really, other than the Maiden in Black almost certainly being the most powerful, at least at one point, it's impossible to say. Dusk I rank second purely because she has access to sorcery, but you could argue the Firekeeper likely has, or had, access to various miracles. And if the doll was able to bust out a Rakuyo and move like Maria, well, you get the idea. But most useful? That's an interesting one. Let's put it this way, aside from Dusk, they all level you up. The Emerald Herald can also improve your Estus. The doll can grant you a moderately useful blood gem, and she and the Firekeeper can both react to your gestures, if you consider that useful. Knowledge is power, but which of them shares the most knowledge with us? The Maiden in Black and the doll tell us virtually nothing. Dusk tells us quite a bit about the nature of magic and ancient Oolacile. Shanalot would win that, however. She tells us of a great many things and a great many people. The Maiden in Black is instrumental during one of the Demon Souls endings, as is the Firekeeper. For Dark Souls 3, Dusk, the doll and the Emerald Herald are by and large onlookers, with the doll only taking the role of caretaker of the hunter in 2 of the endings. So they all have their strengths and weaknesses in one way or another. What do you think? My own personal ranking of them? Shanalot, Dusk, the doll, the Maiden in Black, and the Firekeeper. It might seem odd to you that I'm ranking the doll above the Maiden in Black, but I just feel like she has more of a character and a personality. The Firekeeper is a pleasant character, but at the end of the day, she feels too much like Maiden in Black 2.0, even if she is more fleshed out. But hey, I like all of them. If we ever get more Souls, or a Souls-style game, I wonder what future incarnations we may run into.
Bearer of the curse, I will always be at your side.